This June, TrueFire invites you to an extraordinary journey into the world of music with our Guitar Heroes and Legends promotion. Join us as we celebrate iconic guitarists who have shaped the landscape of music across the globe. For the entire month, immerse yourself in an electrifying series of insights, inspirations, and exclusive guitar lessons taught by TrueFire's very own legendary educators. Get unprecedented access to the techniques, styles, and secrets that have ignited stages and stirred souls. Whether you're a beginner looking for guidance or an experienced guitarist seeking deeper understanding, this is your unique opportunity to learn from the best in the business. This celebration of music and mastery will not only educate, but inspire you to find your unique sound and perhaps become a legend of your own. Buddy Guy is a living legend in the world of blues guitar. His raw, electrifying playing style and soulful vocals have made him one of the most influential guitarists in the genre. Guy's passionate performances and his ability to channel a wide range of emotions through his guitar have solidified his status as a blues icon. Today's free lesson on Buddy Guy is from Kid Andersen's Guitar Heroes course. Let's dig in.
Buddy Guy. Buddy Guy is, it's very nice to see that, today Buddy Guy is still alive and also very highly regarded, as he should be. Buddy Guy is well into his 80s now. And at one point, he was considered one of the younger guys, the newer generation of the Chicago blues players. The previous generation being like Muddy Waters and guys like that. They took Buddy Guy in, took him under his wing, and he was kind of, one of the guys that spearheaded a more, modern electric style, more uniquely electric style of blues guitar and blues music in general that came out of Chicago in the 60s. Him and Otis Rush and Magic Sam and, these young guys at the time in the late 50s, early 60s in Chicago, they kind of took the genre to yet another place, and really the stuff that Buddy Guy and Freddie King, Magic Sam, those guys were doing. That's the stuff that really I think resonated with with all the later the British guys and stuff like that would eventually transform into rock, blues rock, and so Buddy Guy is hugely influential, and he continues to be to this day. He's an inspiration to everybody who sees him, and I mean the man's over 80 years old, and he puts on a show to this day, which is a great, very. It's not the kind of show you would expect from a man in his 80s. This man's got a lot of energy left. His style has changed somewhat over the years. My favorite era of Buddy Guy's playing, I think is from like the early mid 60s to sometime in the and for about like the next 10 years maybe. My favorite records by Buddy Guy are definitely from the mid 60s to the early 70s, and after that for a while he wasn't that active. He was, but he was doing records with Junior Wells and other stuff like that. But the first album I heard by Buddy Guy was one called Hold That Plane, and it was on Vanguard. It was his third album on Vanguard, and he was another guy of the batch of LPs that I got from my first guitar teacher, where I instantly felt an attraction to his sound, and the stuff he was doing. There's the sound of the band, the sound of his guitar. There's something about Buddy Guy's style. He's very explosive. He's really unpredictable, at times like even jarring, and he completely defies a lot of conventions about guitar playing and music in general, in his approach to this here thing. He's got a lot of signature licks and moves that musically that have been adapted by a lot of guys like Steve Ray Vaughan. You always hear Steve Ray Vaughan playing. Those famous Buddy Guy double stops. And that's a real staple of Buddy's sound. And there's other stuff that he does too that's even more wacky. I mean, I like guys who are kind of wacky, crazy, and unpredictable. And Buddy Guy is one of those guys. He's a very exciting player. He is not one of those, sit on a chair, and he's not, trying to be what you traditionally would call cool. He's hot. He's he's fired up. He's got energy to spare. Sometimes when he bursts, his guitar playing bursts into flames, and he's got more intensity, more energy than he seemingly knows what to do with on the guitar. And at times, it just kind of appears to be completely out of control. And there's there's an element to that that's true, and then there's an element to that I think it's calculated and a very deliberate part of his sound. One thing you hear a lot with Buddy Guy is that he'll bend and play notes in such a way that could only be described as microtonal or outside the Western scale. Like you'll hear B.B. King open a song, but Buddy, and he'll do a bend and it'll go a little sharp on purpose, and because it just adds to that the craziness, and his singing too is like he's not a smooth, slick singer. He just wails, and it goes in all sorts of directions. It's great, and no doubt the man can sing, but his the frantic, frenetic energy he brings into it. It's just it's very signature. It's unmistakable. Buddy Guy, and he's he's somebody that is, there's so much you can pick up from him. He's these days, when you hear Buddy Guy play now, he can still do it. He can still do all the things that made me fall in love with his sound, and I've even heard him, in spurts, take the things that made him great in the '60s and stuff like that, and amp them up, and end up in There's a great version of him in Montreux in about 1991, I think, doing "Stormy Monday." And he does a guitar solo that starts, first of all, it starts so quiet, because Buddy is a master of dynamics. It starts, it's even quieter than that. It's so quiet that you can hear the audience sweat. And he built it in 12 bars, I think, and I think it's less than 12 bars. He built his way from this pin drop quiet intensity to, he goes over to his crazy, almost rock sounding. with the tremolo picking and all this stuff. And in this particular clip from Montreux Jazz Fest in 1991, man, he just really, he nailed it. It all comes together, you know, old Buddy Guy and new Buddy Guy, all just comes together. I saw that on TV when I was about 12, like right after it came out. I saw it, and I'll never forget it. You know, a lot of times now, if you go see Buddy Guy, you know, these days, a lot of times he'll kind of go really heavy on that last stuff I played, and you know, to some extent, kind of drown himself out, you know, because he'll do a lot of basically, you know, just kind of nonsense, and it's cool sometimes, and other times it just, you know, I want to hear him play like the way I know he can still play, because he still to this day will start, you know, a slow blues, and you'll go, there it is. Yeah. But then sometimes he'll quickly deviate into, you know, this little shtick of, well, you know, he'll name drop Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton and play a little bit from all of those guys, and really just deviate from what I personally want to hear, which is Buddy Guy playing like Buddy Guy. But the band's amazing, and he can still do it, and I still hear him do it all the time. And there's just so many things to his style that are, you know, not just appealing to me, but also just really valuable lessons, like the dynamics of how he plays is above and beyond just about anybody else. He'll go from so quiet, and then he doesn't have to build and build and build and build. He can just go into super turbo overdrive hyper space mode very quickly. And, you know, that's the kind of stuff, you know, anybody who says blues is boring and predictable, you know, they're not hip to Buddy Guy at his zenith. And some albums, you know, I recommend you would check out by Buddy Guy is there's one called A Man and the Blues from about 1968. It has the original Mary Had a Little Lamb on it, which is, you know, Stevie Ray Vaughan made that one really famous. From next year, there's a live album called This Is Buddy Guy Live from about 67 or 68. And it has my old friend, well, he's gone now, but Tim Kaihatsu is playing rhythm guitar on it. I believe it's recorded in Berkeley. And that's the other end of the spectrum, where Buddy Guy is just at his most frantic, intense, out of control, you know, still just playing deep blues. But he's you know, his tone is different. He's on the bridge pickup a lot. Buddy Guy played a Strat for most of his well-known stuff, and on A Man and the Blues, it's like this kind of neck pickup tone, and on the live one, it's all bridge pickup, full treble. So he's got a lot of different sounds and different elements to his style. You know, he's definitely not a one-dimensional player. And there's also a record of him and Muddy Waters called Folk Singer, where he's playing acoustic. You know, and he's, you know, Buddy Guy. He was the young dude, but he got with Muddy Waters to do this very old style type record, and he plays beautifully acoustic guitar. with this, one of the greatest of all time blues singers. Then there's, of course, the many records he did with Junior Wells. Buddy Guy and Junior Wells together, they were kind of a known entity in the 70s, in the 80s, and for a long time. They're a great pairing. The first album they did together was a Hoodoo Man Blues by Junior Wells. Buddy Guy, because of contractual obligations, was listed as friendly chap in those album liner notes. But that's another great one. That one, It's My Life, Baby, another Junior Wells record, just has stellar Buddy Guy on it, and he does such cool things backing the harmonica. It's a totally different approach than a lot of the other guys like Robert Jr. Lockwood and the more traditional Chicago guys who play behind the harmonica. They be playing. Buddy Guy will just do stuff that's kind of like bastardizations of that. It just had a much more jagged approach to it, which works really cool, especially with the way Junior Wells plays the harmonica and sings, because he too has a very angular, kind of jagged, jarring approach, and the two of them together just created the most beautiful, sparse and funky blues music that you'd ever want to hear. And Buddy Guy, I think a big part of his style, and I've gotten in arguments saying this before, but Buddy Guy he's the kind of guy, he has this frenetic energy, he has this just boatloads of energy that comes out on the guitar, and like I said, sometimes it might seem like too much for him to know what to do with, but it's part of a sound, and I think a big part of his Buddy Guy style is basically he plays bastardized versions of licks that he got from listening to other guitar players. You can definitely hear that he got some guitar licks from Robert Jr. Lockwood, Luther Tucker, when he plays behind the harmonica. And he takes those guys' ideas, but whether he just can't contain himself, he just can't help but sound like himself. So he makes all those licks sound like Buddy Guy. To what degree that is by design or not, that's where the debate has been sometimes. But the end result is that he's got his own completely unique style, and especially when it comes to playing single note lead blues guitar in the style pioneered by B.B. King and such, where a lot of Buddy Guy stuff will just really be stuff he lifted from B.B. King, but it's processed through this Buddy Guy filter of jarringness and angular approach and frenetic energy. Is processed through this filter that makes the stuff almost unrecognizable as being B.B. King lines and B.B. King licks. And it's just, it goes, oh, that's, you can't mistake the Buddy Guy sound. But he might even be playing note for note what B.B. King did. But whereas B.B. King would be all smooth like, and Buddy Guy will be, that's what he, will sound like doing it. because there's just this blah kind of energy that comes out and adds the Buddy Guy sound. And it's really cool, you know, and his relationship with pitch is unlike most other musicians too. There's so many Buddy Guy slow blues where he will just put all these microtonal inflections, which I covered earlier, but he'll do this really wide bends. Just adding a whole bunch of notes to the to supplement the Western 12-tone system, and he'll do lots of bends like stuff that's out of tune but on purpose, and it just adds up to a very unique style that I greatly admire. And there's a lot of cool stuff to pick from that style. He even will go as far a lot of times as to ignore the relationship between major and minor, because there are many. One example is I'm going to play something inspired by One Room Country Shack, which is totally a G minor blues, and everybody more or less, agrees that, you can play a minor third over a major chord if you resolve it, or if you're, playing blues. That's acceptable. But what's generally not considered acceptable is to have a minor song and a major's third in the melody. However, Buddy Guy is one guy who will sometimes completely ignore that, and frequently will end a minor song with so he completely shatters all boundaries of the known major to minor relationship. And, it's just done with such irreverence and conviction that he just establishes a new harmonic landscape. And he's just one of my absolute all-time favorites for it.